Good morning, Commissioner Murphy.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm okay. How about yourself?
Hanging in there.
Great.
Good morning, Vanessa.
Good morning.
And then Commissioner Bookland, good morning to you as well.
Good morning.
All right, let's see here. Good morning, Commissioner Hubble and Commissioner Freeze.
Good morning, Amanda.
Morning, Amanda.
Morning, Lisa. I'm gonna just mic check you in case there's any questions about your stuff on the agenda.
Good morning. Hi,
Good
Amanda.
morning. Thank you. And I see we have a number of guests with us this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Commissioner Meyer here.
Good morning, Commissioner Meyer. Thank you. I see Kurt has joined us. Kurt, and Todd, can we both just do a quick mic check for your presentation? Well,
Hi, Amanda. This is Kurt.
Hey, Kurt. Todd, can I have you check your mic too?
Sure. Hi, Amanda. Good morning.
Hey, thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Rummel.
Hi.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 8 a.m. I'll call the Sewerage District Commission to order. I see that we have a quorum. I think Ezra and Sarah are the only commissioners at this point that I didn't see online.
President
Awesome.
Hubble, Commissioner Meyer is here,
Who is he?
but and I apologize. I missed Commissioner Wilson earlier. So I believe Eskridge is the only one who's not here yet.
Okay, I didn't see Ezra's name, so, okay. Welcome, everybody. So welcome to our guests who are here for our meeting this morning. Janelle, you want to go through the virtual meeting guidance?
Well, in Janelle's absence, Amanda will do it.
Okay,
That's okay. So good morning, commissioners, members of the public and staff. To help us have a smooth meeting, I'm going to go through just a few decorum rules for everyone. So please ensure your mic is muted unless you are speaking. Please state your name before speaking. For those who are speaking, please have your cameras on if possible. You may turn off your cameras off if you experience technical challenges. And as a reminder, the public chat has been disabled, but you can still send messages to the host. And this meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. And as Janelle would say, with that, thank you for following the meeting guidance and let's have a great meeting.
okay, thank you very much, Amanda. Let's see, that will take us to announcements. Michael, do you have any announcements?
President Hubble, I don't have any announcements this morning.
Okay, that will move to appearances by the public. Do we have anybody from the public that wishes to say anything?
We have one new employee to welcome, President Hubble.
Okay, I didn't see, I'm on the wrong, it must be on the wrong sheet. Yeah, so, yeah, I remember seeing that on the agenda and I have to go to the different agenda that has it. So that was Lori Dunn, I think, was going to do the introduction.
Yes, good morning. I'm Lori Dunn, the District Technology Manager. I'd like to introduce you to Cameron Thompson. Cameron joined the district on August 14th. Cameron came to us from TrueStage, which is formerly known as CUNA, where he was a senior business systems consultant. At TrueStage, he developed software and he also led development projects. He has experience with a wide range of programming languages and business systems. He brings over 20 years experience from a variety of different technology areas. Cameron has quickly become involved in some of our key district systems. He's already working on the process reporting system, or DARC. He's created some enhancements for our laboratory applications, and he's begun some work on the user charge billing system. Cameron has 2 high school age children and his wife works as a lawyer at a small law firm in Monona. His whole family is very big into hockey, so they stay pretty busy during the hockey season, which for them runs from October to June. When he's not involved with hockey, Cameron enjoys woodworking, art, and barbecuing. Please help us welcome Cameron to the district.
Okay, welcome, Cameron. Let's see, that will, okay, did we have any appearances by the public? Any appearances by the public? Okay, I don't see any hands up or anybody indicating so. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. We have a ratification of a sanitary sewer extension in Fitchburg, the approval of the meeting minutes from the 12th of October, a cash statement operating, expedited boundary agreement in Wanakee, relocation order and determination of necessity, Northeast Interceptor Wanakee extension capacity improvements, transaction amount for laboratory testing services for PFAS analysis, transaction amount for Struvite harvesting reactor recycle pump, and approval of abatement of 2024 property tax levy. Do anybody have any questions on any of those items before we get a motion? Any questions? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make that
Wilson.
motion.
I'll second after Clark.
Okay,
Wilson.
motion by Commissioner Clark, second by Commissioner Wilson. All those in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None, motion carries. Okay, that will take us to topics. We have basically every one of our topic items relates to the budget. So first is A, review and adoption of the 2024 operating capital projects and debt service budgets, requires a 2/3 vote. So we'll do a roll call on that. Amanda, Michael, did you want to say anything before we move on?
Yes, so just a few points, just to highlight some of the elements in the CAR. And you're really approved, the commission is approving 3 budgets. You're authorizing operating expenditures of $57.9 million. You're authorizing a capital budget where we're going to spend $45 million on capital in 2024. And you're also authorizing spending limits for each project. And that's an important thing where the commission has a lot of control. It's not just the total amount of capital that we're spending, but you have given us limits for all the capital projects that are in the plan. And then the third budget you are approving is our debt service budget. And that is $15.3 million in debt service for 2024. This project or this effort started with the budget a month and a half ago in September 14th, when I presented the draft budget. We did have a public hearing on the 28th of September. There were no public comments, but we did receive one written comment from the town of Windsor. And I replied to that letter of comments and to address some of the questions that were raised in that letter. So with that, I will turn it back over to the commission, and this will be a 2/3 vote for this item. So we'll need 6 commissioners to vote in favor of this budget. So I'll turn it back over to you to the commission for discussion and action.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Any commissioners have any comments they wish to make? Sarah and Tom, I guess Tom was first and then Sarah.
Yeah, I would just a quick comment. We did get an email as well, but it looks like I have a halo going there. Sorry, everybody, but that's the way it is today for your good little Irish lawyer here. We did get a comment from Waunakie's utility manager as well, Michael, but you did respond to that. And I just wanted to note that so that everybody else can remember. And then the other thing is, although you said that we really started this process in September, I think we started this process either at the end of last year or the beginning of this year, where you put together a group of municipal staff that's involved in trying to deal with this with our budget at their local level and trying to get suggestions from them on how best we can do this. And I think you've implemented most, if not everything, of what they've suggested, which was a little more steadiness in our budget and a little more communication in what we're doing. I think you've done a good job of that too. And I just wanted to have our commissioners remember that that was part of the process as well. Thanks. I have no other questions, particularly on the budget. We've done a good job of ferreting things out, I believe, in the last month and a half.
Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
Thanks. I agree with those comments, especially the last point that you made, Tom. That was a bit of the point I was going to make, which is, as I'll just speak for myself, as a former elected official, it's hard to sometimes to pass budgets without wanting to tinker ourselves and add our own amendments and comment. And yet we have a really collaborative budgeting process between the commission and staff at the sewage district. And so sometimes I worry that it seems like we are kind of perfunctory approving everything that comes across our plates from staff at the commission level. And I just want to assure our owner communities and others who are watching that that is not the case, that this is really the result of a lot of deliberation and conversation and priority setting over long periods of time with commission staff, and that collaborative relationship results in a budget that I think we all feel pretty comfortable with. And I can speak for myself, I feel confident that the difficult choices that have been made throughout the whole process. And we don't, as a commission, need to somehow put our fingers in at the end to feel like we made an impact on what's presented to us, because that has happened the entire time and will continue to happen as our oversight authority continues going forward. So I just wanted to say that, because sometimes it feels like we don't have a lot of commentary and discussion at these points, at these kind of critical junctures of the process. But that's, in my opinion, because we've been having such good conversation and deliberation over the entire year and for years past. So thanks to the staff team for the good work on this, and thanks to the owner communities, to Tom's point, for their collaborative participation in these difficult decisions as we have to invest in infrastructure, just like everybody is facing in their own budgetary challenges.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah and Tom. Anybody else have any comments?
Tom, I might quick chime in, Commissioner
ahead,
Meyer
Ezra.
here. I'm struck by, I think I'm probably echoing things that Michael and Sarah and Tom said, but the infrastructure drives what we do. And Lisa, I don't mean to put the spotlight on you, but I will. I was talking with Michael recently and said, I miss those regular reports on our capital projects that Bruce Borelli used to do. I hope you'll bring them back. And the reason is it's that constant reminder for us that I sure valued when we used to get them. And again, hope we'll continue to get them. But the infrastructure is what you guys on staff are doing every day. And these projects take a long time. They're capital intensive. We're replacing infrastructure that, original first phase infrastructure that was put in when we built out the region later part of the last century, and it's all coming due now. And that's such a big driver of our budget. I know, I noted Michael mentioned that in his response to some of the written comments we received, but that's a huge part of what we're doing in our budget here, and we do each year. And so it comes to the fore when we're doing budget, but then also I love to see what we're doing on the sort of real-time basis as those projects are built out and staff are doing all that good work to make infrastructure happen. That's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ezra. Marcia?
Thank you, Commissioner Chair. I want to appreciate Commissioner Eskridge, because as the current elected official from Madison on this committee, it did not go unnoticed through our city budgeting process about the 9% increase in rates. And it's having watched the city budget, as Sarah mentions, you kind of see how agencies have to grapple with infrastructure, and I watched it with the water utility as well. So it's kind of it's hard for everyone. And you saw that one chart and how it looks so unevenly applied among our community members. But I appreciate the Michael's memo of an acknowledgement of that letter we got, and how we're trying to come up with potential actions that could address those kind of things. So I look forward to that. And this is an important, you don't really see this agency if you don't know about it, but it's everywhere, and it's really important that we always be mindful of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marcia. Anyone else? Okay, I just want to echo what everybody said, particularly what Marcia was saying, is difficult choices we have to make. And when we looked at it this year, looked at it last year, the 9% increase, it's like, you can do stuff at the margins, but it really only has a minor effect on the overall budget. And so I think they're tough choices. And I don't think anybody likes to face this. And I know I'll have to face my wife in a few months when she has to pay the water and sewer bill and wondering why it went up. So With that, seeing nobody else has anything to say, do we have a motion to act on I gotta find the thing, move down to adopt the 2024 operating capital projects and debt service budgets?
I'm happy to move approval of the budgets as proposed. Commissioner Meyer here.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Meyer. Do we have a second?
It's Wilson. I'll second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Wilson to adopt the 2024 operating capital projects and debt service budgets. Amanda, would you like to do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, I would be happy to do that. Commissioner Bookland,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Eskridge,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeze,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubble,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Rummel,
Aye.
and Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for doing the roll call, Amanda. That will move us to the adoption, review and adoption of the 2024 service charge rates and the septage disposal rates. Ben, were you going to go through that?
I am. Thank you, Commissioner Hubble. Let me share my screen. Just one moment, please. All right. Folks should be able to see my slides. Can you please confirm?
You can see it, Ben.
Great, thank you. All right, so I am here today to present on the 2024 service charge and septage rates. Outline for my presentation today, I'll start with a little bit of review of some of the basics for anyone who's new to the process, needs a refresher, members of the public, what have you. I'll move into the proposed rates themselves to talk about some of the changes that we're seeing. And then ultimately, you can see highlighted number 3 here, I'll seek approval for those 2024 rates. I'm going to then end my presentation with an update on the service charge rate setting and billing methodology review. So this is something that I think most folks know we've been looking at for a couple of years. Michael has also been providing updates as we've kind of gone along this year, but I'm here today to provide some, reinforcing updates and take any questions that folks may have. But I do want to emphasize there have been no changes to our rate setting methodology at this point that have affected the rates that you're going to see today. Really, the immediate changes that we've been making are around communication, and so I'll talk more about that. But I just want to, as I go into the presentation, just to be aware we're really following the historic process here. So just to start again with some general background, what are service charges? So service charges really fundamentally are the district's best attempt to fairly allocate our costs, right? So in the budget that was just approved, we've got a service charge revenue requirement of around $55 million, right? And so this is the question then is, okay, how do you divvy that up amongst our 25 owner communities, right? And so that's really what I'm talking about today, is kind of our best attempt again at a fair methodology to do that. It's the district's main revenue source. And as I noted, it's billing that we are doing to our 25 owner communities. And as I'll go into a little bit of detail on, we're really setting for our service charge rates, actually seven different rates. So we've got 7 different rate parameters that try and get at different characteristics of our community's wastewater, right? What are they sending to us? How costly is that? And so that's a little bit of background. And to emphasize the point, what we're talking about today are what we kind of an industry term, but what we consider wholesale rates, meaning these are rates that we as kind of a wholesale utility are charging to our owner communities, right? So these are not the rates that, end users, homeowners, businesses receive, on a monthly or quarterly basis from their city, town, or village, but rather these are the bills that we are charging our communities. They then, generally turn around and bill those end users along with any of their own, infrastructure or, operating and maintenance costs as well. So we're talking today about those wholesale rates. I like looking at an example of a bill itself. This is an actual screenshot that I took a couple of years ago now, but this helps me at least kind of solidify what are we actually talking about here. So I'm just going to go through this briefly, kind of left to right, to give folks kind of a sense of exactly how, when we say rates, what are we talking about? How does this actually look when our communities get the bill? So going from left to right, you can see the 7 different rate parameters. There are a number of acronyms there. I'll go through those in just a moment. But again, the intent here is to have components of our rates that reflect different aspects of the wastewater that we're getting. And typically, we've included these different parameters often because it's a component of our permit requirement that we have with the DNR, right? So we know we need to treat wastewater to remove certain nutrients. And so that's often reflected in our rate structure. So you can see here, those 7 rate parameters. We start with volume, right? What is the amount of flow that we're getting from our communities? CBOD, I'm gonna maybe butcher this a little bit, carbonaceous biochemical oxygen demand. I believe if I'm any of the engineers or scientists can correct me if I'm wrong here, but suspended solids, total Kjeldal nitrogen, and total phosphorus. So those 4 that I just named off, the 4 acronyms you see there, those really get at the strength of our wastewater, right? So we want to understand, how does the wastewater that our communities are sending us vary from not only an amount perspective, but also from a strength perspective. And then finally, we've got 2 what I call population parameters, equivalent meters, which is really a count of water meters in a given community, and then actual customers, so a count of customers that community has, as part of their utility. So those, when I'm asking for approval of our rates today, it's really rates for each of those 7 parameters. Moving again from left to right on the example bill you see here, quarterly quantity, that reflects the fact that as we go into the next year, we've got staff who are going out and sampling our communities to understand, again, how much and what is the strength of the wastewater that's being sent to us. So that for this given community, for this given quarter, that was the amount of each of these parameters that was measured through that sampling process. As we keep moving to the right, we get to the rate itself. This is from a couple of years ago, so these are older rate values, but these are the actual dollar value rates that are approved by the commission each year that then go into the billing process. And then finally, you've got that quarterly bill column, which is essentially you're multiplying the quantity of measured wastewater or components of wastewater times the rate, and that gives you the quarterly bill amount. And then you can see this community had a total bill of this $514, $250. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful. That it always helps me to kind of see an actual example. And then I'll talk just a little bit at a high level in terms of, okay, so that's how we bill, but how are we setting rates in the first place, right? How do we get from the $55 million that was just approved in the annual budget to the actual numerical rate values that you see in the card today? So starting, in this year, of course, we start with the $55 million that's in the budget that was just approved. We allocate that to each of those 7 different parameters. We're essentially saying of that $55 million, we're going to get this much from volume, that much from suspended solids, this much from equivalent meters, so on and so forth, through a methodology that we've developed over time that seeks to essentially make assumptions about how our costs relate to each of those different parameters. It's kind of a little bit of an art, a little bit of a science to do that. But we're basically bucketing those $55 million into each of those 7 different parameters. We then, for each of those parameter values, we work to estimate what we think next year is going to look like. So this is a little bit of a challenge. It's a projection exercise. Typically, we're looking at historic trends over time. We're looking at, sometimes we've got information on industrial growth that might be driving up some of the different components of wastewater, of those rate parameters in particular. And so that goes into estimates that we're doing. And then we're essentially using the budgeted revenue number in number 1, the estimate of next year's flow, loadings, and population, and number 2, to calculate the rates for each parameter. And you can see what the math is here, but it's essentially they go back to, I don't know, middle school math, what have you. The numerator is that budgeted number. Again, how much in revenue are we seeking to get from that rate parameter? The denominator is how much stuff of that parameter are we expecting to get, right? How much flow, how much suspended solids. And that gives us the numerical mathematical rate value, again, that you see in the CAR that's in the resolution for approval today. So that's really the process that we go about to set rates. And then, as those rates are approved, we go into the next year. And as I've noted, we're applying those rates to measured flow and loads to calculate our service charge bills, right? So as we go through our budgeting process, we're providing estimates to our communities. We're providing estimated charges for the coming year, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. But then as we go into the next year, actual bills are based on measurements that we're taking each quarter as we go through, in this case, 2024. So that's what I've got for a little bit of kind of brief background on service charge rates and billing. Any questions there? Otherwise, I'll move into a discussion of the rates themselves.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Anyone have any questions for Ben? Any questions? Okay, I don't see any hands popping up, Ben, so move ahead.
All right. Thank you. So I'm going to get into the rates and into the changes. So what you see here is a table with each of the 7 different rate parameters, and then the percent change in the rate value itself, comparing 2024 proposed rates to our current 2023 rates. Now, I want to start by maybe asking the question, why aren't all of these 9%, right? So you all just approved a budget that had an overall service charge revenue increase of 9%. And so I think a fair intuition would be, well, then our rates will all go up by 9%. But there's a couple of things at play here that drive these that I'll kind of get into why CBOD is going up by 26%, because obviously that sticks out, but I want to start with the fundamentals. An important piece, if you go back to the math of how we're setting rates, they're very sensitive. The rate values themselves are sensitive, or meaning they change based on our projected, flow and loadings that we have for the next year, right? It's that denominator in that division problem that calculates the rate value. So if we're assuming a growth or a reduction that's a little bit more than average for any of those rate parameters, that's going to impact rate values. Another thing at play here, just kind of mathematically, is that our rate values are not all the same, meaning they're not all starting at, for example, $100, right? There's variation in terms of the dollar value. Some are a number of cents per pound up to dollars, and so when you're applying changes, that variation in the base, that variation in your starting point, means that you end up with differences in terms of the percent change given those differences in the base amount. So want to talk about that. Now let me go into the parameters themselves. And so you can see here, I'll highlight CBOD that sticks out with this 26% increase. And I noted this in the car as well to provide a little bit of context, but we are projecting a decrease in measured CBOD in 2024. And so, well, the amount of money that we're projecting to get, the amount of service charge revenue for that parameter is really kind of, in line with what we would expect given the budget increase. The rate value itself has to really go up higher than average to get to that revenue amount because we're expecting lower loadings in 2024 compared to 2023. So that's what's driving that 26%. And then you see some kind of, I would say, relatively normal or at least typical fluctuations amongst the rest of the rate parameter percentage changes there. So that's a little bit of a overview of what's going on with the rate values themselves. I want to talk a little bit as well about how our communities are impacted, right? So as you know from reviewing the CAR document, I've got a table in there with projected changes for each community, right? How much are we projecting them to pay in 2024 compared to 2023? And there's maybe a similar question here. Why aren't all these going up by 9%, right? Why aren't they all going up by the increase that we have in the budget for overall revenues? And well, I think that's a fair intuition. I think it's also important to point out that our communities are different, right? Our communities are growing at different rates. They're of different size. They're differently constituted in terms of kind of residential versus industrial mix. And so all those differences drive differential impacts from a service charge perspective. And that's, I think, really kind of what we want. So to go back to an earlier slide, our service charge methodology is intended to fairly allocate our service charge revenue requirement. And part of what that means is we're trying to, kind of allocate costs to what's causing the cost, right? So if you're a community that's growing at a faster rate, you may have, increased projected service charges relative to some other communities. So that's one thing I want to point out. A second is that, as we put together these projections and these percent changes, what we are comparing is the 2024 projection compared to the projection that we made a year ago. So because we don't have actual total 2023 charges by community yet, right? We won't get that until after the end of the year. And so part of what's going on here when you see these percentage changes, especially those that vary from kind of the more 8 to 10%, we're kind of playing catch up, right? Meaning, okay, we did a projection last year, but this year actually ends up looking a little bit different than we expected. And so we need to correct our assumption, correct our projection for next year, which leads to some swings in that percentage change that they are seeing here. So for example, I'll go to the Village of Windsor that you can see in this table really sticks out with that 21% increase. Part of what's happening there is our projection of their service charges for 2023 was too low. And I'll talk a little bit about why that was, but it was too low. And so when we go into 2024, we're seeing kind of that emerging 2023 data that proves out it was too low. And so we need to get higher. So we're kind of catching up, so to speak. And so, our projection for 2024 isn't different than what we've been seeing in terms of the reality of 2023 so far, but it's different than that projection we made a year ago at this time that ended up being, again, too low. And in this case, we know Windsor is a fast-growing community. They've got, I believe, a probiotic industrial customer that's been in place since 2018 that has been growing over time. And so when we see communities that have that faster growth, a couple of things happen. One, we are more challenged to accurately predict what kind of their future flows and loadings are going to look like. It's just a challenging process anyway, especially when you've got kind of that higher growth rate. But then, also they presumably have more customers across across whom they can spread our service charge increases, right? So while we're charging Windsor, there's a projected 21% increase in charges for 2024 compared to 2023, and there's, a 9% aggregate service charge increase overall. Communities that are growing faster tend to have more customers so they can spread those charges across as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the end user is going to have that same percentage increase. So I wanted to point all that out. There's a little bit of nuance here that can get a little bit confusing. You see on the other end of the spectrum here, town of Vienna, where you've got a negative 1% projected increase year over year. And in that case, we had projected too high last year, right? So we're kind of catching up again, we're correcting that. And so you see that coming down. And so you see, again, in the table in the car variation, that variation is driven by, actual differences amongst communities and by some of these kind of aspects of projection that just are challenging and have this kind of catch-up aspect to it. So I guess just to summarize, our method as a whole is intended to fairly allocate charges, and it's impacted by, the budget, of course, that budgeted revenue number, but then also our flow and loadings that we're projecting over the next year. Community impacts will vary based on their characteristics and our ability to project their future flow and loadings. And as I noted on the front end of the presentation, our methodology in putting together the rates for 2024 really matches what our historic process has been. So I'm going to pause there. That's kind of my last slide on the service charge rates before transitioning over to septage. So I want to see if there are any questions.
Okay, Ken, you have a question?
Yeah, Ben, so the Village of Windsor, is that probiotic industrial customer on their own meter now, or when does that process start?
I don't know the details. My understanding, and maybe Todd, you can correct me if I'm off base here. My understanding is that Windsor is billing them through kind of a separate industrial billing methodology, right? Where they're kind of, as many of our communities do, where they're doing some degree of direct sampling to, pass along those higher costs, right? Those higher than residential strength waste types of costs. Now, I don't know the details of their process. I don't know how much they're able to sample. I know it can be a challenge for many of our communities to do the kind of sampling and lab testing that we are able to do on a regular basis. And in fact, that's leading to some of the additional future research that we're doing around our service charge program that I'll speak to at the tail end of this presentation. But I guess to answer your question, it's my understanding that they do have an industrial billing program that they're using for this customer in particular. Does that answer your question? I don't know too much of the details of it, however.
Yeah, that helps. The other part of my question is the district proactive on identifying those customers, or does a community customer need to come to the district and?
Yeah, so another good question. Another question that I think actually again connects to the research, the programmatic research that I'll talk about later. So there are a couple of different ways that these industrial customers can come to our attention. One is through service charges, right? If we're seeing some big increases, oftentimes that's going to lead to new conversations with our communities where we say, hey, what's going on here? And you start going down that road to learn a little bit more. We also have a permitting process, right, where we've got, categorical type of permits that we need to put in place under, the regulations we're subject to based on different types of industrial customers. I think it's a challenge in either case for us to comprehensively identify everyone who is out there. And I know we are not alone in that challenge. I've talked to other similar sewer utilities that, as I've talked about kind of, okay, how are you doing this? It's like they're reading business magazines, right? They're talking to some of the planning folks in their communities. There's unfortunately not kind of a perfect I would love that there'd be like a data stream where we, perfectly get information on that, but it's a little bit of a scrappier situation. And so I think we do our best to find out who's out there, because we need to understand that. But I think there's probably areas for us to grow there as well. And that really, again, leads to kind of that additional research that we're working on, to jump ahead in my presentation a little bit around industrial, because it does have these real impacts on our charges, on our, wastewater, et cetera.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, anyone else with any questions? You can move on, Ben.
Okay, thank you. All right, so transitioning now into our septage rate setting process, or our hauled waste. So we, every year, just as we're setting service charge rates, we set rates for all the types of hauled waste that comes to us as a district through, essentially through trucks, right? So not through the sewer lines, but through trucks. I've got a little bit of information on this slide, just in terms of kind of how we're setting those rates and how we go from our service charge rates into septage, because it actually is kind of a path that goes from one to the other. So our septage rate setting process really has three key inputs. Our service charge rates flow into our septage rate setting process as a measure of the cost of treating wastewater. So if our service charges are going up, that generally means that our septage rates, our septage charges are going up as well. We also measure the strength of our hauled waste from time to time, right? So if the strength of that waste is going higher, conceptually, that means it's going to be more costly for us to treat. And so that also drives rates up. And then finally, we look at volume, right? So we're estimating, similar to how we're trying to project the future for our communities, we're trying to project the future in terms of volume of hauled waste, and that affects the rate value, and that affects how much revenue we ultimately get, and obviously how much hauled waste we get as well. So our septage rate calculation, you can see the math here, but essentially we are looking at the estimated cost for each of the types of septage hauled waste, which I'll talk about on the next slide. We divide that by how much of it we expect to get over the next year, and that's how we calculate our rate value itself. So it's a somewhat similar calculation to our service charge rates. And then you can see here the projected increases over the next year. And these are changes in the rate values themselves, right? And you can see there's quite a bit of variation here. And so, I want to talk a little bit about why that is and what's going on. So, as I mentioned, we are impacted by service charge increases on septage rates. So that's driving the increase to some degree as well. But we've also been able to refresh the strength of that waste. And so we are seeing in a number of cases increases in just the strength of the hauled waste compared to kind of the previous update that we did there. So that's driving increases that you see. I know in the case of grease trap waste, which kind of stands out here with the 43%, we are seeing higher volumes in grease trap waste over the last number of years. I know there's been kind of one hauler in particular where there have been some increases, and I think we're looking at some limitations there to kind of better manage how much we're seeing there. But really our attempt with septage rate setting is to again, kind of fairly allocate the costs that we're incurring, and to have, some rough equivalency between what we're charging on the service charge side to our communities and what we're charging on the hauled waste side as well. So the increases that you're seeing here, the variation that you're seeing here is really due to, again, variation in service charge rates that are increasing and variation in the strengths that we're seeing. But again, this is kind of our historic methodology that we've used here. And some of the increases that you're seeing in terms of overall revenues that we're expecting to get on hauled waste overall is being driven by some of the increases in volume that we're seeing, particularly on grease trap there. So I'm gonna pause. That's what I've got on septage. Happy to talk more about this if there are questions. But my next slide is a request for resolution approval. So I just want to pause to see if there are questions on the septage rates.
I've got a quick one.
Sure.
President Hubble, is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wondered, Bennett, during the course of the process, especially when there's some changes happening on this hauled waste side, do you take a look at sort of the going rate that the folks who are trucking this stuff around could potentially get elsewhere? Just at some point, if our rate, our rates are well, defensible and all the great methodology we use to set them up, but if they strayed a ways away from sort of market, we might see a drop off in how many people come and drop and dispose with us. So I'm just curious, look at that, that backdrop.
That's a great question. So, I've not done myself kind of a comprehensive comparison, but I know anecdotally, and I think we have gotten some information because, we're obviously not myself, but we're communicating with those haulers pretty regularly. My general understanding is that we tend to be kind of below the going rate for at least most of the types of hauled waste. And I think that to some degree has led to some of the increases in the volumes that we're seeing from a hauled waste perspective. So I guess that's just to say, I don't think that even with these increases that will be out of line with the market, right? Maybe we'll be closer to the average. But that's what I can say in terms of my understanding of where we sit relative to the marketplace, if you will.
Sounds good. Good to know. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Ben, why don't you show your last slide?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to seek now resolution approval for the 2024 service charge and septage rates, and then I'll right after assuming approval here, I'll move on to that methodology review update as well. But let me stop here and hopefully get that approval first.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the service charge and septage disposal rates for next year, 2024?
I would be happy to move approval of the resolution. Murphy.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Murphy, second by...
This is Sarah, I'll second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Estridge. So we have a motion to approve the resolution that adopts the service charge and septage disposal rates. Motion by Commissioner Murphy, second by Commissioner Estridge. Any further comments or discussion? Okay, seeing nobody raising their hand or speaking, all those, we don't need a roll call, or we don't need a majority or a super majority vote, right? It's not listed as it was for the budget. So
no.
Yeah, so we'll just go with a normal vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? None. Motion carries. Okay, you had something else then, Ben?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for the approval. So I just wanted to provide a brief update on our review of the service charge methodology. Again, this is a little bit of a restatement or emphasis of what Michael has already shared. So hopefully there's nothing kind of brand new or earth-shattering here, but I wanted to just provide that update again, so you have the opportunity to kind of connect it back to what we've just been talking about and ask any questions that you might have. So as a reminder, over the last year and a half, going back to 2022, at the Commission's request, we put together a service charge fiscal work group made up of staff from our owner communities to help advise us, to really give us a direct line of feedback on, what's working with the service charge program, what are maybe some areas for improvement, and where do we want to take this? Where do we want to take our review? What potential changes do we want to look at? So that group met over the course of 2022 and 2023. And then from that feedback, along with, staff review, we made three recommendations to the commission in April of this year. So those three were first, provide charges earlier. I'll go through each of these in turn on the coming slides too. But first was provide charges earlier. Second was providing additional kind of background information on our rate setting process. And third was calculating bills in advance. That one is in gray because as Michael has already shared, we didn't move forward with that, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But I wanted to kind of point that out at the outset here. So starting with number one, providing charges earlier. What we did for that for this year, as I think folks are aware, is we provided draft estimates in terms of total 2024 service charge amounts in mid-September. We provided those with the caveat that things could change, right? The budget has not yet been approved. The commission still is reviewing. But I think as we were having those conversations with the work group members, what we were hearing is, on balance, it's helpful for them to get things a little bit earlier in the process because, just as we are going through our budgeting process in the fall, they're going through their own budgeting process in the fall, right? So having that key info to them just a little bit earlier seemed to be helpful. And indeed, we did get some positive feedback. So I pulled from one of the emails that I got. I know this is a question that you all in the commission had. And I would say, yeah, generally the feedback was positive. In some cases, produced some questions and some back and forth, which is all good. And we want to have those open lines of communication. But it sounds like people were, happy with kind of that a little bit earlier draft estimates, even recognizing again that things can change. But as this comment notes, they're kind of going through their own budgeting process. They could use that information when we sent it. We provided additional information. So we've got a new webpage on the district's website that just has some kind of background. It's almost like an FAQ, frequently asked question, on our service charge program. So certainly would encourage you all to check that out. But that's kind of our first attempt to provide additional information and see, hopefully that helps. And if there's more questions, if there's more that we can do in terms of different forms of communicating that, that's something that we can look at as we go forward as well. And then finally, I'll spend just a moment longer on this one, calculating bills in advance. So the proposed change here, and this is this idea of we're providing projections for next year, and then reality comes, and sometimes reality is just a little bit different. And if reality is higher, if their actual charges are higher than we projected, that can cause challenges for our communities, right? And so the proposed change had been to use historic data to calculate bills in advance. So that's a proposal that I spoke with you all about. But as we're having additional conversations with some of the owner community staff on our work group, a challenge was identified that I think we hadn't quite grasped until those conversations, which is if there are changes in industrial activity, it can put our communities at risk. And by that, I mean, and maybe let me use an example. In 2014 in DeForest, an industrial business, Sanimax, had a fire. They had a fire, they went back into business. We thought they were going to be operating as normal as we went into 2015. But as it turns out, they needed to put a pause in their operations and rebuild their facility. So they went from kind of regular production to no production then for a period of time. Had our historic billing methodology been in place, the situation that we could have had was we could have set charges for DeForest based on an assumption that Sanimax was operating for that entire coming year. Sanimax goes out of business. Now, what is DeForest going to be able to do? Because they can't turn around and bill Sanimax for kind of the portion of their overall charges that they allocate to industrial versus residential. So then if they're left holding the bag, so to speak, they might have to increase charges on residential customers instead. So, it's not theoretical given that fairly recent example. And so we wanted to put a pause on that and really instead, and this is Commissioner Clark, what I was speaking to earlier, we know that there are other similar utilities to us that have more robust, I would say, industrial programs and industrial billing programs, right? Where they are taking their capabilities from a sampling and billing perspective, and they're doing some billing on some portion of, industrial customers directly. It takes some of the load off of the municipalities that maybe don't have that capacity. And indeed, we know, at least in one example, in the Twin Cities, their sewer utility there has a separate industrial billing program and is able to then use historic billing to also give their communities some more predictability from a charges perspective, because they don't have that variability risk on the industrial side. So our next step is really to research this further. If we made this change, this would be a big change with a lot of impacted stakeholders. So it's not something that we're taking lightly, but really what we want to do next is to kind of go into a research mode, look into this further, and see if this is something that would add value, to us and our communities as a whole. So that's really kind of that one has transitioned a little bit given that identified risk, but I think in a way that could be very helpful, because that would also give us additional information on activities of these large industrial customers to better understand what's going on, better predict charges, what have you. All right. I see a hand. Yeah, Commissioner.
Yeah, Brad, why don't you go ahead?
Just curious about the timeline for the next steps, the research on basically carrying out what you just described. Which I assume is going to be looking at what our local communities are doing, as well as what our peer sewerage districts might be doing.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of kind of the next steps of research that we need to do. So, I would say from my perspective, that's work that we are embarking on, really essentially starting now, but over the course of the next year, I think is going to be where the bulk of a lot of that research comes in. We are looking at the possibility of hiring a consultant to help us kind of work through what that would look like as well, right? Again, given that we know that other utilities have such programs, how can we learn from them, right? We don't want to develop this in isolation. We don't want to develop this without as much knowledge of some of the pitfalls, as possible. So we're looking at potentially procuring for a consultant to help us with that. They could also help us with some of the kind of general review and updating of our service charge methodology that you kind of need to do every so often anyway. So I think there's kind of a win-win opportunity there. But I'm working on kind of what the overall project plan is, but I think in the back of my mind, at least right now, to me, there's a good 6, 9, 12 month kind of research and learning period to really make sure that we understand, how does this work today? To your point, what are our communities doing today? How many of these kind of industrial entities are out there that are being billed in a different way, versus kind of the mainline residential billing methodology? So there's a lot of, I think, of that research that needs to be done. And that's, I guess, roughly the timeline that I'm seeing right now.
Look forward to hearing more about it as you develop a more detailed work program.
I want to also reinforce it's a focus item, a commission focus item for 2024, and our commitment is to return to the commission with findings in late 2024 or early 25. So I'll be reporting our progress to you on a quarterly basis.
Okay, anyone else have any questions on that upcoming project? Okay, I don't see anybody else. Thank you, Ben.
All right, great. Thank you all. Take care.
Yep, and that will move us to 4C. Kurt and Todd are going to introduce the 2024 connection charge rates and plan review fees and annexation fees.
Good morning, commissioners. Kurt Sauser here, engineering technician. And can you see my screen?
Not yet, Kurt.
Not yet.
Not yet. No.
There we go.
There it is.
Yeah.
All right. So yes, Kurt Sauser, engineering technician. I'm here today to present on the topic of review and adoption of 2024 connection charge rates, plan review, direct connection, and annexation fees. So as a reminder, these rates are charged to customers when new lands connect to the sanitary sewer system. Connection charges are comprised of two different components: conveyance facility connection charges and treatment plant connection charges. This slide shows the details of conveyance facility connection charges, or CFCC. So I wanted to highlight that these are adjusted annually by the ENR construction cost index, which closely follows inflation, but is not exactly inflation. The increase for 2024 is 2%. And so a year ago, when we set the current 23 rates, the increase was almost 8%. Here is a map showing the 32 different CFCC basins throughout the district. Generally speaking, the basins which are furthest from the treatment plant also require the most infrastructure to transmit the wastewater to the plant, which affects those CFCC rates. These infrastructure costs are recovered over time as developments occur and sanitary sewer services provided. The second part of connection charge rates is called treatment plant connection charges, or TPCC. This component of the connection charge rates is a single rate district-wide, which is based on the value of the plant. Here's a graph showing that 2024 will be year 6 of the 8-year phase-in of the full TPCC rate. As the capital improvements plan budget is approved annually, the 2026 value of the treatment plant, which is the target at the end of the red line, comes better into focus. After 8 years of this phase-in, the TPCC rate charge will be representative of the full treatment plant value. This slide is a table showing the 32 different conveyance facility rates combined with the treatment plant rate, representing the total connection charge rate for a particular basin. These are the connection charge rates that are being recommended to take effect on January 1st, 2024. Now let's discuss the 2024 review and permit fees. These fees are identified in the district sewer use ordinance for providing certain services. We had reviewed costs related to each of these fees when setting the 2022 rates. For next year, staff is recommending a 4% adjustment, which reflects the general wage increase, which was just approved in the adopted budget. And that is all I have to present today. Are there any questions? Greg, it looks like you have a question.
Greg, go ahead.
Thank you. So Kurt, for the review fees, do you guys recover full cost associated with the review? In other words, what I'm trying to ask here, since this is a review for new customers, are existing customers paying part of this, or do the fees actually cover your review time? Have you split that out in terms of payroll and checking that? Do you understand the question I'm trying to ask?
No. Could you try and ask it again?
All right. So you charge a fee, right? And so this happens at the city all the time. The idea is that the fees for new development, for reviewing that new development, cover the district's time and cost of reviewing that application, and existing customers are not subsidizing. So in other words, I'll just make up an example. You review a new plat, it takes you 4 hours to do that work, write up your report and put that together for the commission. And whatever your billing rate is, does the fee that you collect, and to know this, you really have to do it for the entire year, because right, you're going to be over on some and under on others. And you kind of look at this as an average at the end of the year, right? And the goal here, at least my question is going to this goal, is does new development that you are reviewing for approval pay its own way, or are existing customers subsidizing the review costs? Does that help?
Yeah, when setting these rates, so the time that is allocated to new developments where connection charges are due, that time is separated out, and I'm able to average that over if I say there's 50 sewer plans that have connection charges due, I'm able to take that time and spread that out average that out over a year, and we're able to look at those costs individually and average that out over time. So I would yes, I would say that those new developments for those new connections, I would say those are fully paid by those new users. Does that answer your question?
It does. Michael, I saw you on mute. Did you have something you wanted to add or no?
I think Kurt rounded up with a perfect response there, so I don't have to say anything.
Thanks, Kurt.
Okay.
I might add on a follow on there just to round out the complete picture. We do assess these charges against our customer community where the annexation area or the plan review area is, falls within their jurisdiction, right? So that they're the ones receiving that bill. They then have the choice, just like they do with service charges, right? Pass it on to the end user. And so we presume that some kind of passing on of those costs happens so that, like Greg's getting at, the sort of the developer or the driver of annexation or whatever else it may be is who the cost is really incident on ultimately. Am I right in all that, Kurt?
Yeah, I would say that is accurate. Yes, for the annexations and the sewer extension reviews, those review fees are invoiced directly to those specific customers, and I think generally it's passed on to the developer that's making the improvements.
Got it. Thank you.
So yeah, staff recommends approval of resolutions 2023-1026 R9 and R10. And yeah, I will leave it in your hands.
Okay, Brad, you have a question?
Yeah, just to follow up on the billing, and from the answer that Kurt provided, I'm assuming that what we're charging are direct costs for the staff that are directly involved in reviewing the annexations and the sewer extensions and drafting the staff reports and the like, rather than the support costs that would basically be overhead, which is for every staff member involved in doing anything for the district. There are lots of support costs, IT and human resources and the like. And I'm assuming that we're not billing, not including that, I guess I would call it kind of overhead in the charges to the individual communities, just the direct cost. Is that correct?
Yes. So we looked at everything when we set the rates for 2022, and for 23 and 24 now, I think we have increased by the general wage increase that's been approved by the budgets. But yeah, in 22 we did a deep dive into only those costs that were directly attributed to those review fees and allocated accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I would, if there aren't any other questions, I'd be happy to make the motion to approve the resolution.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Murphy to approve the resolution on the connection charge and plan review fees and annexation fees. Do I have a second?
I'll second Commissioner Meyer.
Okay, motion by Commissioner, second by Commissioner Meyer to Approve the resolutions related to the connection charge, plan review, direct connection annexation fees. Do we have any further discussion? That's okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody
Kurt.
opposed? None, motion carries. Okay, that will take us to the chief engineer and director report. Michael?
Yes, I have two items to report to you today. First, Amanda sent to you last week a video on channel 3 regarding COVID surveillance, and it was a really nice feature story on our role with doing that surveillance. And the district has been working with the Wisconsin State Lab of Hygiene for 3 years to provide wastewater samples for COVID surveillance sampling. And we have worked with the lab, and we have streamlined our sampling processes because we're collecting the samples for the lab. In July, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention named the Wisconsin Wastewater Surveillance Program a National Center of Excellence for Wastewater Surveillance, and joining 3 other centers of excellence in the country. We are proud of the partnership with the state lab on this important work to help elevate state research on COVID. So if you haven't seen that video yet, you should watch it. It's a pretty nice sample, and it was really our staff, operations, and communications came together to coordinate with the State Lab of Hygiene for that really great story. Second thing is, I'm really pleased to report the recent solar expansion on the maintenance facility that is just about completed. This is Mark Bruner, our project engineer. And these solar panels were in our 2023 capital improvements plan, and it provides about 75% of our building's energy needs. And these panels can generate 100 kilowatts of power, which saves us about $13,000 a year in utility costs. The system was installed in 2 phases, and some commissioners may recall way back in 2016 when we built the maintenance facility that the return on investment didn't quite work for a large installation at this time, but we built the roof in a manner that would allow a future expansion, and that is what we did here today and this year. So we waited a few years, but the return on investment is better. And then I'll just finally say that through climate, we're avoiding 98 tons of CO2 emissions by the placement of this installation. So really good work by Mark and the engineering team for making this happen. So those are my 2 reports. If there are any questions.
Okay, any questions for Michael, Beth?
Hi, I just have a comment, and that is those are both really good pieces of good news, and I appreciate that, both of them. Seeing that we're moving more into less reliance on other energy sources and moving over to solar and maybe even wind in the future is great. And I'm really happy to see. I was happy to see that news article too about your collaboration with the State Lab of Hygiene. So good work on all of that. Thank you.
Greg?
Thank you. So Michael, since you brought this up, I'm curious, what is the return? When do we pay these off now? How many years does it take to break even these days?
I don't have that answer at hand, but I will get that answer and share it during my next CED update. How does that work?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Alan with the operations report.
Good morning, Commissioners. Alan Grooms, Operations Manager for the district, and I'll be presenting the September operations report. Does just to confirm, everybody's got my screen up?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. There we go. Moving through kind of our performance metrics for the month of September. The CBOD5 carbonaceous biochemical oxygen demand, 5-day oxygen demand on that. That's our pretty commonly monitored parameter at 2.3 was kind of the low end of our historical range on that. That kind of also reflects this time of year, gets a little bit easier to treat as we get a little bit cooler weather. The blowers become a little bit, we can get a little bit, it becomes easier to deliver the amount of air. The air becomes a little bit more dense. And so you can deliver a little bit better air to the tanks, a little bit cooler temperatures. So it's kind of reflected here in the numbers. Ammonia 0.2 is a good spot for this time of year. September is the last month that we're at the 1.1 milligram per liter range. October, it gets to be a little bit more expanded range on the ammonia, but typically that ammonia value is always in that that orange range at 0.2 to probably about 0.45 range. That's a typical spot for us to operate. Kind of a way too early preview, but with some of the thoughts on liquid processing improvements that we're looking at with a low DO process, those numbers would be higher. So we would be putting out more ammonia, but less total nitrogen. We'll get into the details of that as we approach that project, but that's in the current state of operation. This is a pretty standard number. Phosphorus numbers were up a little bit, 0.51. Those had been trending up a little bit. We were looking at some issues with our process as far as tuning as we were taking tanks down to do aeration tank cleaning during the month of September. Those numbers have fallen back in line, coming back into October. Suspended solids tracking at a good spot at 6.7. Chloride numbers, again, we aren't seeing that dilution. So, but the historical range here, we've had a couple of dry years. So I keep saying that it's a dilution issue, but that range is now starting to reflect, about 3 years worth of relatively dry conditions for us. And there are disinfection numbers continue on at 87. 87 most probable number per 100 milligrams per liter or milliliters. Sorry, I misspoke there. And that's well below our requirements there of 400. So any questions on the performance dashboards? And I see over here is where I've got I see a hand up from Commissioner Bookland.
Yes, thank you. Just a question about the CBOD. We just heard that we have a new testing equipment method, and I'm just wondering if that lower CBOD is partly because of the new methodology.
Yeah, that's a very astute pickup, Commissioner Bookland, that I think a month or so ago, we had one that was it showed a 1 on the number, which I questioned. But yes, I think we are going to see those numbers shift down slightly from where we have been. So I think that is very much a contributor to what we're seeing with that. So good recall there. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to move on to the next.
Alan, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but I had a quick.
Nope, you're good.
So those fecal numbers that we're seeing, I just wanted to check in. So we've had the new UV online for, I think, close to an entire full season now, right? And so it all going well. That upgrade is happy with that as an operational system.
Yeah, Commissioner Freeze, it's a good question. It's actually, believe it or not, we're closing on the end of our 3rd season.
Wow.
This is actually
okay. Sorry, I missed that totally. Thank you.
Well, I think we may be thinking so the newer equipment is working really well. This is the first year of our I'm going to call it our extended disinfection season. So we're running first of March to 30th of November. So that may be kind of what you're recalling there, Commissioner Freeze. And so we are operating pretty well through that. We had some concerns about how we would do our clarifier maintenance in our off season. Probably it'll show up more in the October numbers because we're actually in the process. We've just completed week 2 of a 3-week evolution of cleaning out those clarifiers of the algae growth that kind of accumulates over the summer. If you've been on site and done a tour, you've probably seen that. That's a job that we really didn't want to be doing in early December. So we agreed with DNR to maintain the dates that we had historically done it. So we're in the process of doing that. Originally, I thought we may have to bypass the UV units. The older units would have probably fouled up very quickly and been probably impossible to operate, I would speculate. So maybe I'll just admit, maybe being a little overprotective of these new units, not knowing what they're capable of. We were going to do a bypass. We tried that in the first week of the spring, and that didn't work the greatest operationally. So we decided to try it, just pushing what we were cleaning through there and disinfecting all of it, knowing that we we're going to take a little bit hit on the clarity of the water coming through there, but that system should adjust. The system handled it well in the spring, and we've actually been doing it the same way here in the fall. It seems to be working pretty well. So as the systems age, we're finishing up year 3. We are starting to see some more issues, some of the normal maintenance type issues with things that have to be replaced. So we're getting past the new UV system smell, I guess you might say, and we're getting into kind of more of a into settled in kind of operation with the system, but it's continuing to do really well. So that's probably way too much information for what you really want to know, but
No, it's not. I appreciate it, Alan. So I am kind of an operational geek on this stuff, so I do appreciate the detail. Thank you.
okay.
Greg, I was with you on the exact same wrong way of thinking about it. I think it's the pandemic time trap. Our brains just lost a couple years in there, but yeah, thanks for the update, Alan. It's helpful.
Appreciate that, Commissioner Meyer. So looking at, we're doing our quarterly resource recovery updates, just updating where we're at on the slides. The clean water is reflective of the water we're returning back to the environment, tracking right along to be right in line with what we've done in the last couple of years. These rain events we've had some of them that are fairly substantial. We had a couple of weeks ago, we had I think we got 3 to 4 inches over the course of several days. Did not impact plant flows just because of how it was stretched out and how dry things were. We did not even see it move the needle on the plant flows. So I expect that these numbers will be right in line at the end of the year. The biogas number is going to track. It looks like we're going to hit somewhere between the 2021-22 numbers. So again, right in that the recent mean. And the reused effluent, again, it's very similar. That's going to track right in that same range of around 200 to 220 million gallons, it looks like. So any questions on this slide? And then moving on to resource recovery, we have not made any more Metrico cake, the Class A product this year. I don't know whether we'll do that as we get into December or not, but those numbers have been steady. Our Metrico, which is our Class B liquid biosolid production, what we're sending, what we're storing, those numbers look like they're going to check in right around that 38 to 39 million gallons, right in line with previous years. Struvite production looks like we're on track for improved numbers. I would project roughly a 10% increase in production there of struvite removed from this treatment plant. So that's due to the efforts, kind of some of my operations team that have been working to try and see if we can squeeze a little bit more out of that. And then our biosolids storage, the end of September was just 69.8% full. We actually, the Metrico team had kind of a wet September and kind of was feeling it a little bit being behind getting stuff out, but they've been killing it in October. They've been getting out on days that I really thought they would end up raining out, and they managed to keep it going. So we're looking at right now, they're not done for the year, but as of this morning, looking at, we have storage into probably early to mid-April, which is probably enough to eke through. It's not where we want to be for the year, but we're not done yet. So feeling like we're optimistic that we're going to finish up in good shape on that. So any questions on this slide?
Alan, what does that mean? Down from 70% full to where are we at now-ish?
Yeah, so Commissioner Meyer, what do you mean as far as volume or?
Yeah, in terms, I mean, the tanks, the number you show us on the dashboard here is sort of how full are the tanks, and 70% sounds a little scary, but then you're saying it's been a great October. I'm just curious, if we compare in apples, what are we at now?
Right now I think this morning I'd have to pull up number, and it gets a little, when the tank levels get low, it gets a little hard to say for sure, but we're roughly about 20% as of this morning.
You might like to be lower, but you can live with that number. Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I mean, we'd all love to go into Thanksgiving with dry tanks and have all that storage. That's probably not realistic, but because we usually, kind of depends on the weather. If November gets, freezes up early, that'll shut us down early, but the crew has been very diligent about getting out there. Any of you with a farm type background are familiar with that. It's like, if you can get out and work in the fields, you're out doing it. And they definitely have that mentality, and they've been really putting in the work. So if you happen to run across any of them, thank them. They're really making it go and giving us some breathing room. So
Thank you.
I don't have any other thing to present unless anyone has anything else for me. You guys have had a number of questions, so.
Okay, my screen froze up for a while there. I just got a notice I'm unstable internet connection, so bear with me if something happens. Paul, you have regulatory and legal?
Good morning, Commission. It's actually me, Vanessa, who's going to be doing the update today. Thanks for having me this morning. So I'm providing an update about a summary of our legal work in September. Kind of a high-level overview of what work we've been doing for the district. So a fair amount of our work was spent on some contract development regarding district easements and district property. That was really the bulk of the work that we did for the district in September. But then, of course, regulatory work that we continued to do for the district was another fairly large chunk of our work. Some HR advising, and then just a kind of general work that we also do for the district regarding municipal services and that kind of thing. So happy to take any questions for you on that summary.
Tom's got a question.
Yeah, not really a question. Just wanted to congratulate Vanessa and welcome her back. It's good to see your face back here at our meetings.
Thank you very much, Tom. Yeah, I've been out on maternity leave. So that work that I just summarized, I didn't do much of it in September, but I know Paul's been taking great care of the district, and I'm happy to be back. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, well, thank you, Vanessa.
I'm hoping to see that baby on Halloween next week.
We'll walk by, Ezra.
All right.
Yeah, we'll bring her out. She's got a little bear costume.
I'm surprised I haven't seen you already, but yeah. Thanks, Vanessa.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
That will take us to future meetings. So we have the next in-person meeting that we're discussing that will take us through the end of the year will be the last meeting in November. So it will be November 30th. Will be in person. So the first November meeting and our only meeting in December, right now we're anticipating will be virtual. So mark that on your calendars. Do you have anything more to add on the future meetings, Michael?
No, I don't.
Yep.
Tom Hubble, this is Tom Wilson. So we're saying November 30th is going to be in person?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe Amanda can change the invite that we got because it does say virtual.
Yes, it does say virtual. It says real-time discussions. President Hubble and I this Monday discussed the future agendas, and we discussed my desire to have an in-person meeting for that closed session performance briefing, because I have some information to share with the commission. And so
okay, but that's fine. You're just, somebody will change that so that we know that. Thanks.
Commissioner Wilson, I will make sure that that gets populated across the calendars and whatnot, so it's clear for everyone.
Of course you will. Thank you, Amanda.
You bet.
So hopefully before the end of the year, Michael and I will discuss and figure out, like for January, February, 2 to 3 months ahead, what we can anticipate for in-person meetings. So as of right now, the November 30th is the only one anticipated for this year. So unless something were to change, it's always possible, but that would be the only one for this year, the remainder of this year for our 3 meetings that we have left. Okay.
Sounds like a holiday party.
Yeah. That takes us to future agenda topics. Anybody have anything? Tom's put up a little emoji or whatever they're called. And other business. And Tom, do you want to move?
I will move that we adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by.
This is Clark, second.
Second by Commissioner Clark to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thanks,
good
everybody.
remainder
I'll
of the
take
week.
my halo and go home now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Happy Halloween.